Hello guys, it's me, Jiggy Spice. So today I'm going to bring you guys the build guide for my sword and shield and greatsword build. This has been requested by a lot of people lately, so let's finally get into it. I just want to give a quick disclaimer before I get into this build. This is not going to be the easiest build to play. I would probably rate this a 4 out of 5 in difficulty scale. However, I'm going to try my best to give you not only the build itself, but also a few very useful tips on how to play this build so that you can have great success with it. But this is not going to be a be-all end-all build. There are certainly situations where this build is weak, and like I said, it's going to be quite difficult. That is because you're going to be wearing 5 pieces of light armor, and like we know, the light armor did get nerfed lately, so being a light armor melee player is a little bit more difficult than what it used to be. You're also going to be quite squishy because of the 5 light armor pieces. But with the greatsword, if you use it correctly, you can be super tanky, even in light armor, and I'm going to do my best to teach you how to achieve that. Alright, so let's get into the build. This is going to be our greatsword build. We're going to start off by choosing heavy blade. This makes your charged heavy attacks have a 15% armor penetration. Then we're going to go over to swift onslaught. This gives you a 20% haste for 5 seconds after you enter into onslaught stance. That's the DPS stance. Then we're going to get keen posture. After gaining onslaught stance, your next hit within 5 seconds has a 100% increased chance to critical hit. It gives you a guaranteed critical hit after entering onslaught stance on your next attack. Then we're going to get critical comeback, become energized by landing a critical hit and regain 5 stamina and 5% base health per second for 5 seconds. This is a 10-second cooldown, so you have a lot of uptime on this, and since we have the keen posture, this is going to proc all the time. Then we're going to get the first ability, which is Relentless Rush. This is a spinny move that hits twice. It inflicts a 20% slow for 4 seconds on the target it hits. The first hit deals 110% weapon damage, the second hit does 120% weapon damage. This is a great ability both for damage, mobility, and some CC with the slow there. We're going to upgrade that into Relentless Power, which gives you a 10% M power for 10 seconds after you use this ability. And then we're going to upgrade it again into Adaptive Rush. If you are in Onslaught stance already, when you activate this ability, you will root your target for 1 second. If you were in Defiant stance, when you activate this ability, you will heal for 15% of the damage it deals, maximum of 5 hits. So if you hit multiple targets, you can get a pretty chunky heal. Then we're going to get the Skyward Slash. This is going to be a big damaging ability. What it does is it swings your blade up in a brutal arc, staggering your target, dealing 80% weapon damage and applying 2 stacks of 5% rend for 10 seconds. It stacks up to 3 times. If you are already in Onslaught stance when you use Skyward Slash, it applies all stacks of rend at the same time, 3 stacks, which is 15% rend. And it also enters you into Onslaught stance. Both of these abilities will enter you into Onslaught stance. We are going to upgrade it so you get a follow-up attack which deals 140% weapon damage. This is a big chunk of damage right there, so definitely get that one. You don't always have to use it, but it's nice to have that follow-up attack. And then we're going to upgrade it again. The first strike applies a disease which reduces healing by 20% for 10 seconds. It also makes your follow-up attack have a 3 meter AoE radius. One more thing, the first hit of this attack also staggers your opponent, so it can be really useful. Let's say you have a flamethrower getting in your face, you can just stagger them out of it with that one, so it's a really nice utility and damaging ability. Then we're going to get Step and Strike. After you dodge, you gain a 10% in power for the next 3 hits, lasting 10 seconds. This only occurs when you are in combat, so as long as you are in combat state, you will gain empower every time you dodge. Attacks, everything you hit with this empower effect will also restore 10 stamina on a hit. So that's a really nice ability right there. Then we're going to upgrade it into Unrelenting Onslaught. This reduces the cooldowns by 2% on light attacks or 10% on charged heavy attacks, so that is really useful. You're going to have a lot of cooldown reduction. Next up, we're going to get the Perfect Vigilance. If you are hit while at full health, reduce the damage taken by 20%, then gain a 20% fortify for 3 seconds. That is a really nice ability. It only affects you if you are at full health though, so be aware of that. Next up, we're going to get the Wary Posture. After you go into Defiant stance, the tanking stance, The next damage you take within 5 seconds is reduced by 25%, and that is really nice because also when you enter into Defiant stance, you will gain a 15% damage reduction. So that together with this one means you can really tank some heavy damage even in light armor. So sometimes I will enter into Defiant stance just to activate these if I see that I'm about to get hit hard. Next up, we're going to get the Unflinching Blade. This gives grit to your heavy attacks and also inflicts a bleeding for 5% weapon damage every second for 6 seconds. This stacks up to 5 times, so it's a really nice ability. Then the last ability we are going to get is the Roaring Rupture. You stab your sword into the ground, sending out a shockwave with a 4-meter radius that deals 120% weapon damage. It also gives you 8% fortify for 5 seconds for each foe that you hit, maximum of 3 stacks. Then we're going to upgrade this one into Purifying Roar. You cleanse 2 debuffs on yourself if you use this ability, super useful. And then we're going to upgrade it again into Intimidating Roar. This will make the shockwave apply a 10% weaken for 10 seconds on every target that you hit, and it also makes you uninterruptible for 5 seconds. So what that means is it basically gives you full immunity to all CC, basically the same as what a Riposte would do on the Rapier before it got nerfed. So this is really useful if you see that you are about to fight a bunch of people with a ton of CC. You just activate the Roaring Rupture and you're going to be uninterruptible for 5 seconds. Super useful. And then lastly, we're going to get Faultless Defender. This reduces its stamina damage by 50% when blocking attacks just after raising your guard or with guard point. Inflicts a 5% rend for 10 seconds against melee attackers, which stacks up to 3 times. So when people are attacking you while you're blocking, they're getting a up to 15% rend on themselves. Really insane. So for those that don't know, guard point is the blocking you do while you're charging your heavy attacks in Defiant stance. I can show you what that looks like. When you're charging your attack, you get this blue glow in front of you. That is a shield. So while you have that active, you have 50% reduced stamina damage, which means you can tank a lot of hits. Really useful. Alright, and then moving over to the Sword and Shield, we're going to start off with the Achilles Heel. The final attack in your light attack chain inflicts a 20% slow for 2 seconds, really useful for chasing people trying to run away, and it's also going to give you some extra damage, because we are going to pick up the perk that gives you extra damage to slowed foes. Next up, we're going to get the Precision Sword and Shield. Critical strike chances increased by 10%. Then we're going to get the Reverse Stab. This is an attack that deals 175% weapon damage and staggers your target. We're going to use this as a backstab mostly, but it can also be used as a utility because of that stagger. Then we're going to upgrade that so the ability now gets grit when using it. Next up, we're going to get the Opportunist. You deal 10% more damage to the slowed foes. That is why we chose the Achilles Heel. And then lastly, we're going to upgrade this Reverse Stab into Tactician. It reduces the cooldown of all of your sword abilities by 25% on a successful hit. Then we're going to get the Critical Precision. On critical, you gain a 20% haste for 5 seconds. And then we're going to move over to the Leaping Strike. This is going to be your mobility option as well as a high damaging ability. You leap forward, dealing 150% weapon damage and stagger your target. We're going to upgrade this so that you deal 50% more damage to targets below 30% health. Really useful as a kind of execute ability if somebody is trying to escape from you when they are getting low. And then lastly, we're going to get Cowardly Punishment. If you hit somebody with the Leaping Strike, you inflict a 30% slow for 3 seconds, giving you overall more damage as well. So it's a great opener, it's a great finisher, it's just a great ability overall. Lastly, we're going to get Leadership, which increases your and your group's damage by 10% as long as you have a sword in your hand. Then over to Defender, we're going to get Sturdy Shield. This grants you an additional 15% physical armor. And then we're going to get Elemental Resistance, which reduces the damage from all magical types by 10%. Then we're going to get the Shield Bash. This is your stun. It stuns your target for 2 seconds or 3 seconds when it's upgraded. We are going to upgrade it so it gets 100% more damage as well. Next up, we're going to get the Final Blow. This increases the damage of your third attack in your light attack chain by 15%. And since we chose the Achilles Heel, this is a nice perk to pick up. Then we're going to upgrade the Shield Bash so it gives you 1 extra second of stun, giving you a total of 3 seconds stun duration. Then lastly, we're going to get the Invigorating Bulwark, which gives you a 15 stamina when you use your Shield Bash on somebody. And then lastly, we're going to get Recuperation, which increases all incoming healing effects by 10%. And that is going to be our sword and shield build right there. So obviously you use the shield bash, wrap around the target and backstab them with the reverse stab. If you have the empowering leaping strike perk, you will sometimes or most often open up with the leaping strike. But overall this is a very playful build. It opens up for a lot of diversity and lets you be dynamic on the battlefield. Alright, then over to the armor. What I'm running right now is not the most optimal gear, but I do have some decent perks, but definitely my gear is not the best it could be, as usual. Mostly I like to wear these purple pieces just to show people that you don't need best in slot gear to do stuff. You can still have a great time as long as you just have some decent gear and as long as you have some of the essential perks. The most essential, of course, is just that you have 5 times resilient. You have to have 5 pieces with resilient, otherwise you're gonna be in a bad spot in PvP. Sometimes you can get away with 4 slots of resilient, but for this build you are going to be running 5 pieces of light armor. Definitely make sure you have 5 pieces of resilient. So on my headpiece I have freedom and resilient. I only have 1 piece of freedom. It just gets me out of some of the stuns that might be a little bit annoying sometimes. It lets you like survive a shockwave into a heavy attack and stuff like that. On my chest piece I'm running resilient and relentless freedom. Relentless freedom is going to be a very important perk to get for this build. It removes all of the slows and the roots from you when you activate the ability, so if you get trapped in an ice shower or a void gauntlet comes along to ruin your day, you can just fly right out of it as if though it was nothing. And it's a really strong perk that makes this build really viable. On my glows I have Shirking Fortification and Resilient. These pants are super awesome pants that you can farm from a easy soloable open world boss in Brimstone. Shirking Fortification, Refreshing and Resilient. These pants are probably great for pretty much every build out there. So definitely go ahead and get those pants. I can show you on the screen right here where to get them. And for my boots I have Shirking Fortification and Resilient. My amulet is the same amulet as last time, Shirking Dot Cleanse, Divine and Health. I definitely advise you to have Divine and Health. It's going to help you out so much. As for the Shirking Dot Cleanse, that is not the best perk in the world. Maybe something like Shirking Empower or something. I'm not even entirely sure what would be the best perk. I just kind of rock with as long as I have Divine and Health I am happy. For my ring right now I'm using this ring, which is Leeching, Hearty and Keen Awareness. But I am still kind of experimenting between it. There is this ring you can get from a elite boss in Heliopolis in Brimstone. It's a really good ring. Slash damage, Hearty and Keen Awareness. This is probably a ring that would cost gold cap if you were to buy it on the marketplace. So go ahead and go farm that ring right there. It's a really good ring. Another ring that I often use is the Champion's Ring. Invigorated Punishment. A lot of people have buffs these days, so you just deal a lot of extra damage to the people with buffs on them. And lastly, for my earring, very basic, Healthy Toast and Refreshing Toast. I really like Healthy Toast because it lets me get 1 extra health potion. My mana potions are effectively health potions as well, so for me personally I cannot live without that perk. And also Refreshing Toast, which reduces the potion cooldowns. For my weapons I am using the Champion Sword. This gives me Penetrating Backstab, Vicious and Keenly Empowered. Super good perks, and coupled with the shield, which has Rogue and Refreshing move, it's just too good to pass up. For my blade I am using this one. It has Arboreal Attunement and Trenchant Strikes. It's a really nice sword, especially for my build, since you can see I am running full Rune Glass with nature damage. So you see my nature damage do an additional 2% per piece, which is a total of 10% extra nature damage on my gems. But there is this blade right here, which you can farm in Ebonscale. Super good blade. You can farm this one for free. It has the Relentless Freedom perk if you can't find any armor pieces with that on the marketplace, or if it's too expensive on your server, then I would opt to go for this blade. It's a really good blade. And I also do a lot of light attacks, so this is totally not a bad blade at all. So for our attributes, right now I'm just using the Carrot Cake. This is a pretty cheap option. Gives you 24 strength and 16 constitution. Nice option right there. You are going to have to use attribute food with pretty much any build that I create. So we're going to go for 200 constitution. Very important. If you go any less than that, like 150, you're going to have you're going to struggle. It's going to be hard for you. And then we go split stat between dex and strength. So I'm going to go with 150 dexterity and 150 plus on strength. Whatever extra points you have, put it in strength, but make sure you have 150 on both. The reason for that is, of course, you want the strength 10% damage to melee physical basic attacks, which is your heavy and light attacks. Then for the dexterity, we want these perks. You get a 10% increased chance for critical hits. You get 5% extra thrust damage, which is really nice for that reverse backstab that we're going to use with the sword and shield. And then, of course, the decrease in cost of dodging, 10 less stamina per dodge. Split statting is also going to give you an overall higher damage on both your greatsword and your sword. So I could go 300 strength, but then I'm losing all of these awesome perks from dexterity, and my overall damage is going to be lower. I can show you actually. So right now you see our greatsword is at 1395. If I max that out into strength, 1395 is what it was. And if I max it into strength, you can see it's 1268. So going into split stat is going to give you a overall higher damage. And also putting the extra points in strength is going to give you a little bit more damage. You see 1394 if we put the extra in dexterity. 1395 if we put it into strength. That is because the greatsword scales 1% extra from strength than dex. So yeah, put your extra points into strength. Is going to give you the maximum damage output. So this is the attributes with the carrot cake. Don't forget your attribute food. And that's going to be everything you need to know about how to set up this build. Oh, before I forget though, the Heartrune that I'm using is the detonate rune. And we're using the cunning Heartrune of detonate. This one gives you a 30% speed buff while the Heartrune is activated. It takes 3 seconds for it to actually explode. So in that 3-second window, you get a 30% movement speed increase. And you also get a 15% empower. This does decrease the damage of the actual explosion by 20%, but it still hits for like 4000. So this is just amazing. If you want to burst somebody, you got that 3-second window where you have a 15% empower and speed increase. So you can really dish out some good damage, and then it explodes for 4k damage. You can really delete some people with this. So that's the Heartrune that I'm using. This is the Heartrune that I think is the best, especially for the kind of melee type builds. You can probably run stone form if you want to, but for my personal taste at least, I think the detonate Heartrune is the best one. Now let's talk about how to play this build. Alright, so let's talk about the abilities. First of all, we have to take a look at the stances. So it's very important that you know exactly what both of these stances do. The Path of Onslaught, which is your DPS stance, will increase the outgoing damage by 15%, but it will also increase the damage that you take, the damage you receive, by 15%. You will charge your heavy attacks twice as fast, but they will consume 10 stamina each. So that means if we enter into the Onslaught stance, now you can see my heavy attacks, these are all heavy attacks, swing extremely fast and deal 15% increased damage. All your damage is increased by 15% in this stance, but you also receive much more, which means that when you're wearing 5 pieces of light armor, you're going to be really squishy in this stance, okay? So just be aware of that. And of course you also have to be aware of the fact that you're using stamina to use heavy attacks. So stamina management is something to consider. Now the Onslaught stance does the opposite. It reduces the damage that you deal by 15%, but it also reduces the damage you receive by 15%. And instead of faster charged heavy attacks, you now block while charging your heavy attacks, as we talked about. So while you charge your heavy attacks, until you let go. So only while you charge it do you block, but as soon as you start swinging, you don't block anymore. So it's very important to know what these stances do, and you also have to remember that sometimes you're not in a stance at all with no modifier. And sometimes I will chase people if I'm not even in the stance because of the reach of the greatsword. So most of the time you are going to be in a stance, and you're going to have to use your abilities correctly in order to be able to be in the stance that you want to be in. But sometimes it doesn't go your way because you have cooldowns, you know? You use your Roaring Rupture and then you want to just chase somebody, and now you have cooldowns but you're squishy. What do you do now if a bunch of people attack you? What you can do is just swap your weapon. Then you will lose your stance, you will lose all of the sword buffs, they will go away. So if you need to get rid of your onslaught stance because you're about to receive too much damage and you don't have your Roaring Rupture off cooldown yet, you can simply just swap your weapon, get rid of the stance, and you'll be fine. So that is an important thing to remember. Now one more thing I want to tell you guys about that not that many people are using yet. In the first attack of the heavy attack chain, you do this overhead attack, right? But if you do one light attack and then follow up with 2 heavies, you can do 3 slash attacks, which has cleave. This is also going to give you a faster overall rotation with slightly reduced damage, of course. So if you're in your onslaught and you just want to chase after somebody, you get them hit once and then follow up with 2 heavy attacks. So if you're chasing, you will never hit somebody with that one if you're chasing somebody trying to run away. But you can light attack and then follow up with 2 heavy attacks if you're already in the onslaught stance, right? So light attack, heavy, heavy. That's a lot of damage. That's a lot of damage. So be aware of that chain right there. You can cancel or you can avoid the overhead because this one is easy to dodge. Very easy to dodge, but the wide swings, they're not that easy to dodge. Sometimes you can even roll catch people with the cleave, because if you start swinging from the left side, by the time they roll over here with the 20% reduced dodge, you might sometimes still hit them with the cleave, even though they kind of were supposed to dodge that, because the cleave range is just so wide. It's insane. So yeah, that is a really good tip right there with the 1 light attack into 2 heavies. Now another important ability is the Roaring Rupture. If you waste this one, you will be in trouble, but if you use this one correctly, then you can tank so much. And the Roaring Rupture is why being 5 pieces of light armor still works really well and still lets me be hyper aggressive, because if you use this ability correctly, you can really have so much survivability. Not only does it give you 8% fortify for 5 seconds per foe that you hit, it stacks up to 3 times. It also deals decent damage. 120% weapon damage is pretty decent. It also cleanses 2 debuffs from you. So if you are in a bad spot and you pop this and you hit somebody with it, cleansing 2 debuffs, giving you the fortify, and it also weakens the enemy by 10%, making them 10% weaker, right? And it makes you uninterruptible for 5 seconds, so you cannot be CC'd or stunned or slowed or anything, you know? So you can just... You're about to take a lot of damage, I pop this one, you have grit while using it, so they cannot shockwave you, they cannot do anything, and then you can just run around, or you can start attacking to block their attacks and still counterattack. It's just a really useful ability. Another thing to also be aware of is the Relentless Rush and its effect when you do it from Defiant stance. It heals you for 15% of the damage that you deal up to 5 hits. So if you are in a tough spot, don't Relentless Rush out of there. Try not to do that, at least. If you can, do the Roaring Rupture first and then Relentless Rush, and then you can do the weapon swap so you get rid of the onslaught. So there's just a lot of these little things that you need to be aware of with the Greatsword in order to, well, tip the scale. If you're not aware of them, the Greatsword will feel really difficult and really bad. I see a lot of people calling the Greatsword bad, but once you learn these tiny mechanics, these small nuanced mechanics, it really makes the Greatsword so strong. Now one more tip that I want to just remind everybody, because it's not obvious to everybody right away, but when you have the guard point, like this, right, you can just cancel your swing and just keep spamming the block like that. So if you have a lot of people hitting you like this, you can just kind of... Because a lot of people, when they see you have the guard point, they will cancel their thing and then try to time it so that they hit you in between your guard points. So you can just throw off that timing by blocking like this and then let go when you see you have the opening. So like, you can just spam it like this and just block endlessly, and then it's like, oh, there's the opening, okay, I hit you now. So it's a nice little trick that when I learned it, kind of started to make a difference actually. So the other thing is about the Skyward Slash, you have to think about which opener do you actually want to use, because most of the time, at least for me in the beginning, I was thinking that I should start with Relentless Rush and then follow up with the Skyward Slash, because that gives me the increased critical chance and all of this. So it's like Relentless into Skyward. But you also have to consider that Skyward afflicts the rend. So sometimes I will actually open with the Skyward so that my follow-up heavy attack hits a rended target with a guaranteed critical hit, because I already have Trenchant Recovery, or Trenchant Strikes I mean, which gives me 10 to 20% additional damage to my heavy attacks. So sometimes it's nice to just hit them with that 2 stack of rend there and then boom, heavy attack them. So it's really up to you how you want to play, each situation is different, but just be aware that this actually inflicts rend. It's not just a stagger, it's not just damage, it's actually a rend ability as well. Now on the topic of Skyward Slash, hitting that first stagger there is really easy to always land, but the follow-up attack is very slow. So most people will dodge your follow-up attack unless it's like certain situations where you hit people, but most times in a at least 1v1 situation or not a chaotic situation, people will probably dodge the follow-up attack. So you don't always have to do the follow-up attack, just remember that. You have to click twice to do the follow-up attack. Not every situation needs you to use the follow-up attack. And then there is of course the Step and Strike. Remember, you have 10% in power. This is not only for Onslaught stance, this is regardless. If you are in Defiant or Onslaught or not a stance at all, as long as you are in combat, you get 10% in power for your next 3 hits within 10 seconds. So there is no cooldown on that either, as long as you are in a combat state, which I am not right now. But as long as you're flagged for combat, then you will get Empower after every dodge. No cooldown. Here let's take a look at a clip from an OPR, where you can really see the survivability of this build. Here you see that I'm ending up in a really bad spot. I need to get out, but I get stunned. I'm still in my Onslaught stance here. I Relentless Rush out of that route and I tried to get some distance, but they just stay on me so hard. I tried to deal some damage, but I get trapped in this Ice Shower and boom, I popped my Defiant stance and I was able to tank that blunderbuss shot there because of the increased defensibility. You can see you can really survive a lot if you do the stance dancing correctly and if you kind of pay attention to what you are doing and what the enemy is doing. It's all about timing and it's all about paying attention though. And also this weaving in and out, you can't just stand there stationary. The Greatsword has slow attacks, so it's easy when playing the Greatsword to just kind of stand there stationary, swinging and swinging and swinging, but you are going to die if you do that with this build though. So what I like to do is weave in and out, just kind of set up for some high damage and then weave out again so I can't be punished too much. I have a lot of escapability with the root removal and the leaping strike and overall light armor mobility. It's very hard to stop me. There again, I just Relentless Rush through that Ice Shower. Big damage on these guys with the cleave. Now I'm about to pop the Detonate. Big damage there. The Detonate is awesome as well. With the Defiant stance, I can stand there and tank all that damage. As soon as I see that I'm in a bad spot, just start running around a little bit, get my potions, heal up. Now I'm low again, I need to retreat a little bit, so you're just kind of weaving in and out all the time. But you can be hyper aggressive, you're a really dangerous person on the battlefield. But just be aware of your squishiness and be aware of your strengths and your limitations. Again, just Relentless Rushed out of that Ice Shower because of the Relentless Freedom perk. And we just continue pushing, shield bash that guy to not let him stun me. Used my Roaring Rupture there, but didn't hit anybody, so I decided to go for this guy who is using Detonate because I know I'm gonna tank his damage without no problem. And we just keep being aggressive. There I back off a little bit because I took some damage, get that health potion in. Just know your strengths and your weaknesses, don't over-engage. Like if you need to heal, if you need to re-engage, just do so. Fall back for a couple seconds, get your cooldowns up, get your potions. Just keep being aggressive. It also depends if you have a healer with you or if you don't. This build, of course, like every other build, it works best when you have a healer, but it's also very strong on its own. You don't have to have a healer to be good in a 1vx situation at all. Tried to get the stagger on the guy and using the burnout there, but barely missed him. And we just keep looking for targets that we can attack. I don't like to be in the middle of the clump because you can get locked down too easily. I just try to stay a little bit on the sides of fights always and just kind of punish people who are out of place. We do not want to let this healer survive, so I'm just staying on him. Here we have to back off though. Luckily I get help from my teammates. We got this flamethrower in our back there. Stun him, stagger him with the stab and just keep him stagger locked. Now let's take a look at how you can chase people using the light attack chains. It's really effective, especially against squishy targets like the muskets and the bows. So here I want to go and get this musket right here. We start attacking him, but he's of course gonna run away. We jump after him, I attack him with that and I unfortunately get riposted. He breaks it immediately though. So here you see I'm just following him with light attacks. These are all light attacks and we get him quite easily. Into Defiance stance so I can tank some damage. You see I still deal good damage in my Defiance stance even though it's a 15% reduced damage. And we disengage when we have the cooldowns and potion cooldowns and just reposition. Get him with the shield bash into reverse stab and then a leaping strike. And quickly kill that guy. There he gets speared. We're gonna keep attacking in Defiance stance though, but very shortly we're probably going to go into Defiance stance. You see there is a musket standing up on the walls there hitting me as well. Now we're in Defiance stance so we can tank more, while I reposition and think about how I want to deal with this situation. Obviously we have to LOS the ranged. There's a lot of enemies here. So I just decide to go into the fort and deal with these muskets. Because they are standing up on the wall, they're being pretty annoying. This guy did not want to fight me, but we're not gonna let him escape. Tried to shield bash him, but he's in his crosscut. Finish that guy off with a swing there. We're gonna root him and then finish him off with a normal heavy attack. That guy didn't want to fight and that's fine by me, so I continue going into the respawn point to take it down. I don't have my cooldowns ready on my sword yet, so I'm attacking with my sword and shield. Now that I have my onslaught stance ready, I go over to the sword. Here I pop my detonate. Big damage on everybody there. Cleave them down. Already killed 2 people. There we go, the second guy is dead. Now I go into Defiance stance. Even though I didn't hit anybody with that rupture, that was not my intention. I just wanted to enter into Defiance stance. I know I have to take out this respawn point because they're just gonna keep respawning. And unfortunately, it survives with just 1 health. So I was very unlucky. They're teabagging me out of love. So here I want to take a look at a clip from an arena. We see that they're all hiding behind this pillar, so I decide I'm gonna open up with a leaping strike. Hit them all with the leaping strike and immediately weaken them all with the roaring rupture. Try to get the rend on that guy, but I get stunned. Then I relentless rush into them and I end up in a bad spot. There I swap my weapon so I can get out of Defiance stance or onslaught stance, and then I retreat so I can heal up. In this clip I don't have my mana potion to heal. So I go into my backpack and eat some food. We jump this guy, missed the leaping strike, but we are gonna keep him staggered, rooted, and still deal damage to him. He's trying to run away, so we just do some light attacks to stay on him very easily. Shield bash into a reverse stab, into a leaping strike. Such a good combination. So hopefully this guide will help you get started with the Greatsword. This build is super fun. It's so much fun and it's really strong once you get the hang of it. I just want to say, like, don't give up too fast if you do try this build out. In the first few days when using this build I was getting completely destroyed and it was really bumming me out because I bought these skins from the store for the weapons and I was like, yeah, this looks awesome, and then I started using them and I just got completely destroyed and I thought like, oh, I'm gonna have to use a different build, this isn't viable. But then I just didn't give up, I kept trying and eventually like it clicked, you know, I had that moment of realization where it's like kinda all the information started reaching me and I started to be able to actually maneuver in combat and make the right choices, and then suddenly I became really strong with it. So just keep at it, don't give up too fast. If you like the look of this build, then just keep practicing. And if you do have any questions, just let me know in the comments. I will gladly answer you and help you out. I will also probably make more guides, more in-depth guides for this build in the future. I'm starting to get some more pieces of gear together as well to like further specialize this build. So there are some weapon perks for this build, the Skyward Nullification and Slowing Rupture perks. Both of those perks are awesome, so if you can get them, then I recommend to get those perks. So yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. If you did find this guide useful, I would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to hit that like button, and super appreciate it if you want to subscribe, as it does help me out so much. I'm getting really close to 500 subscribers and I wanted to reach that before Christmas. Huge thanks to everyone who already hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or feedback or input of your own, then please leave a comment down below and let's talk about it. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and as always, have a nice day. Peace.